The crystal chandelier overhead seemed to mock Alara with its brilliance, each facet reflecting a life she could never touch. Her black server's uniform, a size too big and smelling faintly of industrial starch, was a constant, itchy reminder of her place in this glittering world. She balanced a tray of champagne flutes, her wrist aching, and navigated the sea of silk gowns and tailored tuxedos, keeping her eyes downcast. All she had to do was survive the night, collect the cash payment, and she could finally afford the specialist appointment for her son, Leo. Leo's soft, wheezing breaths in the dead of night were the driving force behind every humiliating moment she endured. He was only 2, and the doctors at the public clinic were stumped by his persistent respiratory issues. This charity gala, held in the city's most opulent ballroom, was a world away from her cramped, drafty apartment, but the paycheck was her only bridge to a solution. Well, look what we have here, the voice, slick with condescending amusement, froze her in place. Alara didn't need to look up. She knew that voice. It belonged to Richard Thorne, the man who had promised her a lifetime of security before ripping it away the moment he learned she was pregnant. She forced herself to turn, a polite, vacant smile plastered on her face. "Mr. Thorne, can I get you something?" Richard stood with a small group of equally smug-looking men, his arm draped possessively around a woman adorned in diamonds. He smirked, his eyes sweeping over her server's uniform with theatrical disdain. "I'm surprised to see you here, Alara. I thought you'd be at home, with your situation." He let the word hang in the air, thick with insinuation. Her jaw tightened. "I'm working," he repeated, loud enough for his companions to hear. He chuckled. "That's what you call this? I remember when you had ambition. When you were going to be a partner at the firm. Now you're serving drinks. It's a shame, really. A terrible waste." Each word was a carefully aimed dart, and they all found their mark. Humiliation burned hot in her cheeks. She could feel the eyes of his friends on her, their expressions a mixture of pity and contempt. She just wanted to disappear, to melt into the floorboards and away from his cruelty. "If you'll excuse me," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she tried to move past him. Richard blocked her path, his smile turning cruel. "You know, I'm a major donor to this charity. It's for underprivileged children. It's ironic, isn't it? You could probably apply for some of the aid yourself." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a crisp $100 bill, holding it out between 2 fingers as if handling something distasteful. "Here. For the little one. Don't spend it all in one place." The offer, the public spectacle of it, was the final, devastating blow. Tears pricked at her eyes, blurring the glittering lights. Her pride, the only thing she had left, screamed at her to slap the money from his hand. But the image of Leo, his small chest struggling for air, held her paralyzed. She needed that money. She needed it more than her pride. Before she could force her trembling hand to take the bill, a low, quiet voice cut through the air. "I believe the lady said to excuse her." The voice was calm, yet it carried an authority that silenced Richard's snickering friends instantly. A tall figure stepped out from the periphery, moving with a silent, predatory grace. Alara looked up and her breath caught. It was Dante Moretti, the host of the gala. The reclusive, obscenely wealthy CEO of Moretti Holdings, a man whose name was whispered in tones of fear and awe throughout the city. He was spoken of as a titan of industry, but also as a man with a dangerous, shadowy past linked to the city's old criminal empires. Dante Moretti ignored Richard completely, his dark, intense eyes fixed on Alara. They were eyes that seemed to see everything, every crack in her carefully constructed composure. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit that made everyone else in the room look like they were playing dress-up. Richard, flustered by the interruption, puffed out his chest. "Mr. Moretti, I was just having a word with an old acquaintance." Dante's gaze flickered to the $100 bill in Richard's hand, then back to Alara's pale, tear-streaked face. A muscle worked in his jaw. Without a word, he reached out and gently took the heavy tray of champagne flutes from her hands, setting it on a nearby table with impossible care. He then turned his full attention to Richard. "You are a guest in my home," Dante said, his voice still quiet, but now laced with a chilling menace. And you are embarrassing my fiancé. A collective gasp rippled through the onlookers. Ilara stared at him, her mind reeling in utter shock. Fiancé? What was he talking about? They had never met, never spoken a single word. Richard gaped at him. Your fiancé? This is Ilara Vance. She's a waitress. She is Ilara Moretti. Dante corrected him, the name sounding possessive and final on his lips. And you are no longer welcome here. My security will see you out. He gave a barely perceptible nod, and two massive men in suits materialized, flanking a stunned Richard. As they began to escort a protesting Richard away, Dante turned back to Ilara. His expression softened almost imperceptibly. He gently took her hand, his touch sending a jolt of warmth through her. In the stunned silence of the ballroom, he slid a ring from his own pinky finger, a heavy, gold signet ring bearing a complex crest, and pushed it onto her ring finger. It was far too large, but the gesture was unmistakable. He held her hand up for the gawking crowd to see. Let there be no more confusion, he announced, his voice resonating with absolute power. The message was not for Ilara, but for everyone else. She was his. She was protected. The hours that followed were a blur. Dante led her away from the ballroom and into a private study, a quiet sanctuary of dark wood and leather. He had dismissed her from her duties, arranged for her full payment plus a staggering bonus to be delivered to her, and had a car waiting. But first, he insisted they talk. Why? Ilara finally asked, her voice hoarse. She sat on the edge of a plush leather armchair, the oversized ring feeling heavy and foreign on her finger. Why did you do that? Dante stood by the large window, looking out at the city lights. His back was to her, a formidable silhouette. He was humiliating you. I don't permit such behavior in my presence, but to say I was your fiancé? To give me this? She twisted the ring. You've created a massive scandal. The gossip columns will have a field day, let them, he said with a shrug. Their opinions are of no consequence to me. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. You have a son. Leo. He is ill. Ilara's blood ran cold. How did he know that? How? I make it my business to know things, he said simply. It wasn't a boast, just a statement of fact. I have arranged an appointment for him tomorrow morning with Dr. Alistair Finch. He is the best pediatric pulmonologist in the country. My car will pick you and your son up at 8-inch. This was too much. The public defense, the ring, and now this. It was an overwhelming, disproportionate kindness that set every alarm bell in her head ringing. People like Dante Moretti didn't do things for free. There was always a price. I can't accept, she said, her pride warring with the desperate hope blooming in her chest. I don't even know you. I can't be indebted to you. This is not a debt, he stated, his voice firm. Consider it an investment. I am offering you a position at my company, head of the acquisitions analysis department. Your record at Sterling Financial before you left was exemplary. The salary will be more than enough to cover any expense you could imagine, her mind spun. He knew about her old job, too. He had investigated her. This was not a random act of chivalry. It was calculated. It was planned. Suspicion coiled in her gut, cold and sharp. Why are you doing this? She demanded, standing up to face him. What do you want from me? People in your world don't just hand out favors. I won't be your mistress or some charity case you can parade around. A flicker of something, pain, sadness, crossed his face before his stoic mask slammed back into place. I assure you, my intentions are not what you think. All I ask is that you accept the help for your son. Let Dr. Finch see him. The rest can be decided later. Her resolve crumbled at the mention of Leo. For him, she would swallow her pride. For him, she would walk into the lion's den. Fine, she whispered. For Leo. But I need to know why. I won't work for you. I won't live under your protection until you tell me the truth. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze so intense it felt like he was peering directly into her soul. When you are ready to hear it, I will tell you, he said finally. For now, just let me help your son. The following weeks were a whirlwind of surreal changes. Dr. Finch diagnosed Leo with a rare but treatable condition, and, under his care, her son began to transform. The wheezing subsided, replaced by the happy, breathless giggles of a healthy toddler. Dante had moved them from their tiny apartment into a beautiful, secure penthouse in one of his buildings, insisting it was company housing for a senior executive. He filled it with toys for Leo and everything Alara could possibly need. She started her job at Moretti Holdings, and it was clear the position was real. The work was challenging and fulfilling, utilizing skills she thought she had lost forever. Her colleagues were respectful, if a little intimidated by her perceived connection to their formidable boss. Yet, the question of Dante's motive hung over everything, a constant, unsettling mystery. He was a perfect gentleman, kind, respectful, and surprisingly gentle with Leo, who had taken to him instantly. But there was a profound sadness behind his eyes, a wall she could not penetrate. One evening, after she had put Leo to bed, she found Dante in the penthouse's living room, staring at a small, framed photograph on the mantelpiece. She had assumed it was part of the decor, but now she saw him tracing the frame with his finger. "This is it," she said softly, her voice filled with a new resolve. "This is the night you tell me. I can't live like this anymore, waiting for the other shoe to drop. I need to know why you've turned my life upside down." He turned from the photograph, his face a mask of old, deep-seated grief. He looked tired, vulnerable in a way she had never seen before. He picked up the frame and held it out to her. The photograph showed a smiling woman with warm, kind eyes and a little boy, no older than Leo, with a mop of dark, curly hair, sitting on Dante's lap. Dante himself was smiling, a genuine, unguarded smile that transformed his harsh features into something incredibly handsome. It was a picture of a happy family. "That was my wife, Isabella," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "And my son." His name was also Leo. Alara felt the air leave her lungs. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with horrifying clarity. 5 years ago, Dante continued, his voice barely a whisper, they were in a car accident. A rival, a man I had ruined in a business deal, cut the brake lines on my car. But I wasn't driving it that day. Isabella was taking Leo to the park. He stopped, his composure finally breaking. He sank onto the sofa, his head in his hands. "I lost everything. For years, I was just a ghost. I built this empire, but it was hollow. It meant nothing." He looked up at her, his eyes filled with a raw, desperate pain. "That night at the gala, I saw you. I had my security team do a background check on all the staff, a standard precaution. I saw your name and your son's name. I saw the report on his health issues. And then I saw that man, Thorne, trying to break you. It was like the universe was giving me a second chance. Not to replace what I lost, nothing could ever do that, but to protect what I couldn't before. To use all this power and money I have for something that matters." Alara sat down beside him, her heart aching with a profound empathy that washed away every last trace of suspicion. This wasn't about manipulation or control. It was about atonement. It was about a broken man trying to heal himself by healing her. She reached out and placed her hand on his arm. "I'm so sorry, Dante," she whispered. His confession changed everything. Trust blossomed in the space where suspicion had once lived. A tentative friendship grew, nurtured by late-night talks and shared moments with Leo. Alara saw beyond the powerful CEO to the grieving man beneath, and Dante began to see Alara not as a project for redemption, but as a strong, intelligent woman he was beginning to care for deeply. The oversized signet ring remained on a chain around her neck, a silent symbol of their strange, binding beginning. Their fragile peace was shattered when Richard Thorne re-emerged. Humiliated and professionally ruined after being thrown out of the gala, he had become obsessed with revenge. He began a systematic campaign to destroy Dante, and he decided to use Alara as his weapon. A story broke in a major financial journal alleging corporate espionage at Moretti Holdings. It claimed that a new senior executive, Alara Vance, was a mole, feeding sensitive information about an upcoming merger to a rival company, a company Richard now consulted for. He had fabricated emails and falsified data trails, creating a compelling but completely fraudulent case against her. The accusations sent shockwaves through the company. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. Alara's name was suddenly toxic, her colleagues' polite greetings replaced with suspicious glares. She was devastated, not just by the public betrayal, but by the fear that Dante might believe it. "You know it's not true," she said to him in his office, her hands clenched into fists. Dante didn't even look up from the documents spread across his desk. "Of course I know," he said, his tone one of absolute certainty. "Richard Thorne is a desperate fool, and this is a clumsy, pathetic attack. But we have to treat it seriously. He has allies on the board who are looking for any excuse to challenge my leadership. What are we going to do?" she asked, her voice small. "We are going to dismantle him," Dante said, a cold fire in his eyes. "And you are going to help me." He saw this not just as an attack on his company, but as a direct threat to Alara and Leo, the new center of his world. For the next 48 hours, they worked side by side, combining his resources with her intimate knowledge of financial systems. Alara pored over data, her brilliant mind finding the subtle inconsistencies in Richard's fabricated evidence, tracing the digital breadcrumbs back to their source. She was no longer a victim, she was a warrior fighting for her new life. The day of the board meeting arrived. The atmosphere in the room was thick with tension. Richard was present, invited by the skeptical board members, and he smirked at Alara as she entered with Dante. Richard presented his case with smug confidence, displaying the forged emails and manipulated data on the large screen. It looked damning. The board members murmured amongst themselves, their expressions grim. When he finished, Dante stood up. "Thank you, Mr. Thorne, for that work of fiction," he gestured to Alara. "Miss Vance will now present the facts with calm, unwavering confidence." Alara walked to the front of the room. She systematically deconstructed Richard's entire narrative, pointing out how he had used old email headers from her previous job, how the server logs were digitally altered, and how the financial projections he claimed she had leaked were based on outdated public models. She concluded by showing them the final piece of evidence, a hidden network packet she had uncovered that traced the origin of the entire conspiracy directly to Richard's personal laptop. The room was silent, the board members staring at Richard, whose face had gone ashen. He was exposed, his lies laid bare for everyone to see. "Security," Dante said, his voice like ice. The same two men who had escorted Richard from the gala appeared at the door. "Please show Mr. Thorne the way to the city police, who are waiting for him in the lobby. I believe they have some questions for him about fraud and stock manipulation." As Richard was dragged away, sputtering and defeated, the tension in the room finally broke. The chairman of the board cleared his throat. "Mr. Moretti, Miss Vance, our sincerest apologies." Dante held up a hand. "There is one more piece of business." He turned to Alara, his expression softening into one of profound love and admiration. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Alara," he said, his voice clear and strong, resonating through the silent boardroom. "That night at the gala, I called you my fiancé to protect you. It was a lie born of necessity. But over these past few months, it has become my most fervent wish." He opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring, its brilliance rivaling the chandeliers at the gala. He knelt on one knee before her, in front of the entire board of directors. "I love you, Alara Vance. I love your strength, your intelligence, and your heart. I love the way you've brought light back into my life and my home. I love you, and I love your son as if he were my own. Will you do me the honor of making our lie a reality? Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Alara's face, but this time they were tears of pure, unadulterated joy. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, Dante. Of course, yes." He slid the beautiful ring onto her finger, a perfect fit. The boardroom erupted in spontaneous, heartfelt applause. The corporate threat was neutralized, the personal villain vanquished, and in the ashes of the conflict, their future was forged. 1 year later, Alara Moretti stood on the balcony of their home, watching Dante push a laughing Leo on a swing set in the sprawling garden below. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. Her life was unrecognizable from the desperate, humiliating existence she had known before. She was no longer just a survivor, she was a wife, a mother, and the chief operating officer of Moretti Holdings. Dante looked up and caught her eye, his face breaking into that rare, genuine smile that was reserved only for her and Leo. He waved, and Leo echoed the gesture with his chubby hand, shouting Mama. Her heart swelled with a love so powerful it felt like it could light up the entire city. She thought back to that awful night at the gala, to the shame and desperation that had almost consumed her. It was strange how a moment of profound humiliation had been the catalyst for a lifetime of happiness. A cruel ex-fiancé's taunt had led her to a wounded man in need of healing, and together, they had built a fortress of a family, stronger than any corporation, more valuable than any fortune. She placed a hand on her stomach, where their second child was beginning to grow, a new symbol of their shared future. It was not the life she had ever planned, but it was more perfect than anything she could have ever dreamed.